Thank you. Hello, Reform UK. Are you all fired up? I'm Zia Yusuf. I'm a technology entrepreneur who sold my company last year, and I just became one of the biggest owners to Reform UK. Let me tell you why I did it and why I'm here. I did it because I love Britain. I love my country. Britain is home to the warmest, most welcoming people in the world. We would do well to ask, why do so many wish to come here and make Britain their home? The answer is British values. These are the values of equality under the law, the presumption of innocence, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, love of family, and love of country. These values have been exported across the world. They gave birth to the United States, to Canada, to Australia, and many others. These values in a historical context are nothing short of a miracle. They can be subscribed to by those of all faiths and races, and they are worth protecting. Millions of brave men and women gave their lives in the world wars to do so. And today, I simply see too few people willing to offer a wholehearted defence of these British values. I am hugely grateful. I am hugely grateful for the opportunity that Britain has given me and my family. In fact, it's one of the few countries in the world where my story is even possible. So nobody knows better than I the contribution that immigrants can make to Britain. My parents came here 40 years ago with little more than a medical degree. Since then, between them, my parents have given half a century of service to our NHS. My mother, at the age of 68, still works as a nurse out of love of her profession and her passion as a caregiver. They both made big sacrifices to give me a great education. I started a company, created hundreds of jobs, and have paid millions in taxes. So nobody knows better than I the contribution that immigrants can make to Britain. However, when my parents emigrated here in the 1980s, annual net migration to Britain was around 50,000. This meant public services were not overstretched, and new arrivals could assimilate comfortably. Last year, that number was 650,000. We have lost control of our borders. We have no coherent immigration policy. And this is impacting all British people, regardless of their race or religion. And there are real consequences to this. To our young people, I say you are being betrayed. You are being robbed of a fair opportunity. Almost a third of young adults under 30 still live at home with their parents due to the lack of affordable housing. Yes, we must build more homes, but we must also halt the exploding demand. Our NHS is buckling under pressure, despite us spending more on it than ever. Waiting lists are at all-time highs. Getting a GP appointment is a nightmare. We have been failed by our incompetent political leaders. The state we are in was brought into focus for me by a caller to a radio show I heard recently. He called up to tell the story of his mother, who was in her 90s and who had been taken to hospital. Having worked hard and paid taxes in this country her whole life, she was now extremely sick and she'd been taken to the emergency room. His voice breaking with grief, he recounted how she had to wait hours and hours and hours to get attention. And by the time that attention came, tragically, it was too late for her. Having paid her dues to this country decade after decade after decade, she died without dignity in the country that had failed her. And this is no isolated incident. 19,000 people were left waiting in accident and emergency for 3 days last year in this country. 19,000 for 3 days. This is not something we are willing to accept. This is unbecoming of Great Britain. And this is no fault. This is no fault of our amazing frontline NHS workers who work so hard in awful conditions for us. It is squarely the responsibility of our political elites who have so catastrophically failed in their duty to take care of the people of Britain. It does not have to be this way. It is time to put British people first. It is time for us to reject the political elites who scold and sneer at their own voters, the people to whom they owe their salaries and those whom they are supposed to represent. You know, there are those who claim that Britain should be ashamed of its history. To them, I say no. On the contrary, no country in the world has a history of which it should be more proud than Great Britain. Not only did Britain invent the common law principles that gave birth to the United States, to Canada, to Australia, that does not begin to tell the story of just how much Britain has done to make the world a better, freer place. Great Britain was the first global power to abolish the slave trade, all the way back in 1807, when our Parliament passed the Slave Trade Act. Upon passing this law, Britain formed a new Royal Navy squadron, the West Africa Squadron. We dispatched it to patrol the high seas and enforce this ban on the slave trade. His Majesty's Royal Navy, the mightiest navy the world had ever seen, faced down the slave ships and forced them to comply. In doing so, the heroes of the West Africa Squadron freed 150,000 slaves with the sacrifice of 17,000 of its own sailors and enormous financial costs. The world owes a debt of gratitude to Britain. But this great country is now in trouble. That famous British courage has been replaced with the cowardice of our political leaders. Leaders who are unwilling and unable to stare our greatest challenges in the face and overcome them. But change is coming. Change is coming. We are building a movement built on courage and powered by love. Love of British values, love of our heritage, love of our culture, love of our veterans and our war heroes, love of our family, love of our country. As a technology entrepreneur, I can tell you that in this new era, Britain has huge potential, full of dynamism, talent and energy. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. This island of ours is home to 3 of the world's top 10 universities. We invented the television, the MRI, IVF. We invented the steam and then the jet engine. We invented the computer and then we invented the internet. I said the world owed a debt of gratitude to Britain. And now we are a major player. We are a major player in artificial intelligence and synthetic biology. Britain should be thriving. Britain should be thriving. So why has the quality of life for British people gotten so much worse? You know, as someone who built a successful business from scratch, I can tell you many of the biggest problems we face as a country are not difficult to solve. All we need are political leaders who actually want to solve the problem and possess the courage to do so. You can all see this. You can all see this. You can see that what this country needs is fewer overpaid, incompetent NHS administrators and more doctors and nurses. You know this country needs fewer bureaucrats and more builders. Fewer diversity officers and more police officers. Less time lecturing other countries about their borders, more time defending and securing our borders here at home. This is a movement for British people of all races and faiths who love their country, a movement for those who want to see British values protected, who wish to see our culture celebrated. But let us be under no illusions. This mission will not be easy. Quite the opposite. We will have to face down the entire political and media establishment who hate us for what we love. As they see our movement grow, they will roll out the heavy artillery and they will come after us with everything they've got. In fact, they already are. Thankfully for us, we have an ace up our sleeve. We have a real leader. In Nigel Farage, we have a real leader. We have someone to inspire us in the belief that victory is possible. He inspired me. He has inspired you. He will continue to inspire millions across this great country. We have a leader who loves this country, who spent his whole life campaigning for the interests of British people. And now he has come out of retirement, by popular demand, to lead us out of despair and into a state of hope for this country. He will face down those who seek to destroy us. He cannot be deterred by slurs or milkshakes. And just as he took on the banks and won, just as he took on the mighty European Union and won, now he will lead us as we take on the elite political class, and we will win. Let me tell you something. I know Nigel Farage personally. I have seen firsthand how hard he works for us. 20-hour day after 20-hour day after 20-hour day. He leads us on this journey at huge personal cost. He carries a heavy burden on his shoulders for us, and he does so with the grace and good humour that only Nigel can. So I think we should take a moment to be upstanding and say thank you for that. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you for giving us hope again. Thanks for giving us something to believe in again. Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake. We are living through history being made in this country. In 100 years' time, they will study this pivotal chapter of British history. Children will learn of prime ministers who locked down their own people in the most authoritarian, draconian fashion, and then threw parties for themselves in Downing Street. They will learn of politicians who appear to hate themselves and their country so much that they place bets on themselves to lose. They will learn of a political class that betrayed its own people. They will learn of a Britain that was on the ropes. But I believe they will also learn something else. They will learn that something remarkable then happened. That just as has happened so often before in British history, the British people stood up and said, no, we are not having it. I see a Britain in the future which has secure borders. I see a poised and powerful Britain which celebrates its proud history and looks forward with confidence to its future. I see a Britain that protects its values and cherishes its culture. I see a Britain with patriotic, highly capable leaders. I see a Britain in which, after having paid your taxes your whole life, you can go to the hospital and be seen by world-class doctors and nurses at once. I see a Britain in which our young people can not only afford to move out of their parents' homes, but one in which they can afford to buy a home of their own. I see a Britain which puts British people first. And this is no pipe dream. This is now truly on the cards. Just look around you. It is a real possibility. If it weren't, I would not be standing before you now. We know in our hearts that this is possible. So, to British people, young and old, to British people of all backgrounds, I say this. It is time for us to stand up and write the next chapter in the great British story. It is time to put the needs, the hopes, the dreams of British people first. It is time for reform. Thank you very much, ladies.